I don't feel like stitch in time is an expression.
Yes, it is. Well, it's part of an expression.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. Stitch in time saves 9. Okay, I mean, we can talk about that. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I get it. As an expression, I understand what it means. All right, you ready to go?
Hi, I'm Dante.
And I'm Tommy.
And you're listening to Twigging Onto Twig, a podcast where we talk about Wildbow's most embroidered web serial, Twig.
In today's episode, we talk about Stitch in Time 4.1 and 4.2.
New arc.
Woo!
The audiobook descriptions. Here we go. 4.1. Phew! After that adventure in the bowels, I'm glad the lambs can relaxative a bit now. That is, thank heavens they managed to rectify the situation. That is, those kids sure have a lot of moral fiber.
Terrible. Terrible.
They are terrible. Okay, the second part of it. Okay, I'm done. But really, it looks like the only one happier to get out of Radham than I am is Cy. Welcome to Kenford, home of Dame Cicely's Academy for Young Ladies. It's certain to be a lovely place. Don't you agree? Come on, listeners, let's head into town.
4.2. Girls are scary, but they're even scarier in large numbers.
My favorite thing about it is how it goes from like 2 paragraphs to like
Yep. And,
10 words.
thankfully, yes, girls are scary, but we've got Helen and Lillian and Mary, so we've got girls on side.
Mm-hmm. Our girls are just as scary as yours.
If not scarier.
But at least they're pleasant.
Absolutely.
So, since it's a new arc, I think we need to start out with some speculations about the name.
Yep. So, as we said, the arc title is Stitch in Time. And the original meaning of that is sewing thing. So, if your clothes is tearing, it's better to stitch it now, take the time to fix a small problem, rather than wait until it gets a big problem and takes 9 stitches to solve.
10 stitches. Because you're saving 9, but you did 1. So
okay, yes. 10. Sure, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes. It's very important to be precise with your
stitching.
Anyway, I did a bit of looking into this expression. It originated in 18th century England. It's often misattributed to Benjamin Franklin.
Okay.
Its actual source is not known. It first appeared here. I'm going to look up the name of the book that it first appears in because it was kind of fun. It was called Nomologia, a collection of the proverbs, maxims, and adages that inspired Benjamin Franklin and Poor Richard's Almanac by Thomas Fuller.
So presumably it was a phrase or statement that people were using at the time.
Yes, it was already a phrase at this time. So this was 1732 that this book was published, and so it was already a phrase at that time.
So could be centuries older.
Yes, in fact, it could be a quote from Shakespeare, just not from any of the books that survived. And so this is another Shakespeare quote, except probably not, but whatever. Anyway, I thought it was interesting because this just straight up literal meaning of, well, not literal meaning because there wasn't any sewing going on, but like the actual normal meaning of the phrase of dealing with these problems before they become a big issue.
Yeah.
Is something that we already see happening in the story. With the sort of, the lambs are not doing so great as a group, and Cy is like, no, we need to deal with this now before it becomes a problem.
Right, and Gordon too. Gordon also picks up on that.
Yeah.
Says, we need to solve this.
Yeah.
Things are not going great.
So this is a phrase that our protagonists are
maybe not keenly aware of, but
not necessarily aware of, but like this is something that they would definitely agree with.
Yeah.
Now, you said that you were going to read A Wrinkle in Time and apply its logic to this.
I have not yet.
You have not done that yet?
Not yet.
So if the phrase "stitch in time" reminded you of A Wrinkle in Time, what it reminded me of was Mary Poppins.
Elaborate.
Stitch in time, stitch in time, stitch in time, stitch in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Stitch in time, yes, stitch in time.
I remember that song. I don't remember those being the words.
The words are step in time.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So what you're arguing here is that the climax is going to be a dance battle.
A dance battle on the rooftops of Kenford.
Absolutely.
And, okay, this is actually important. In
Yeah.
the text, it talks about how the city smells of smoke and crematoriums. And so naturally, there will be a lot of chimney sweeps in this town.
That you've solved it right here.
Yes.
This is it. This is there. We can skip to the arc 5. But I am willing to bet some things that, while those casually dropping the fact that there's a stitchery or stitched factory, I don't remember what it was called, Stitchworks. Here,
Stitchworks.
I'm willing to bet that we're going to have at least an encounter in the Stitchworks.
Okay.
A climax.
It seems, I'm not going to say likely, but certainly like fitting.
Plausible?
Fitting. It seems fitting.
Yeah.
For an arc called Stitch in Time to have a scene in a Stitchworks.
And we have Wendy, who is so far seems to be a Stitched that has presence. So we'll see how that goes. I am also, again, I'm predicting things before we've read. I think Wendy is going to take her mission to protect. I don't remember the head's name. Harry? No, that was his friend. What was the head's name?
Warren,
yeah. Take that to an extreme at some point. And I can see her also turning on Genevieve that way. I guess what I'm predicting is that Wendy is going to be dramatically important. That's a key turning point.
I think she will probably be. I think she ought to be important.
Yes.
Anyway, regardless of Wendy or the Stitchworks, certainly stitched in general, I think.
Yeah.
Will be the main tie-in for the name. It would be weird if it wasn't.
Though it's interesting, I felt that it didn't feel in the description that Stitched. I mean, I guess the implication is that yes, they're as ubiquitous as at Radom, but it kind of feels like other kinds of Academy monsters are more ubiquitous here than Stitched. Just
sure, yeah. I don't know.
Just as a feeling.
Like, if he didn't mention them, essentially.
Yeah.
So if they're there, he didn't bother to notice.
Yeah, whereas in Radom, it feels like they talk about them doing things pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, Stitched must be there. There's a Stitched work, but yeah. I don't know.
I did notice that the word "stitched" was the second word in the first chapter.
Oh yeah. Okay, there is a Stitched servant there.
Yeah,
I feel like there's
very
not
first
much
sentence.
more
The Stitched servant helped lift our bags out from the side of the train.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's much more of them though.
Well, maybe we don't know yet.
No. No, but in the text that we've seen so far.
Yeah. So another thing about Stitch that I think we ought to mention is that this is a town built around a women's academy. Yeah. And stitching and sewing and embroidery was very much like a ladies' activity at the time.
Stitching was a pretty big cottage industry before industrialization took over that field. So yeah, I can see that. I can see there being a play on that in a way of like.
So I was talking to my partner who is, into sewing and also into
textiles
history. And she was telling me about how there's this distinction. I don't know if this is still a thing or a historical thing, but there's this distinction between plain work, which is like sewing a shirt.
Yeah.
And fancy work, which is like embroidery and so forth. And so there was a sort of expectation that like a lady would be expected to be proficient at both.
Yeah.
And they would have these classes for embroidery at schools for women.
Mm-hmm.
So at academies like Dame Cicely's, they would have, instead of learning
To stitch
twig
women or
science,
stitch
they would learn
bodies.
like embroidery and stuff like that. And so, in addition to just kind of thinking, ladies' academy, stitch work, possibly a connection, the idea of this sort of fancy work and embroidery makes me kind of imagine that, like, in addition, these women who attend this academy are expected to not only create functional stitched, they're also expected to create beautiful embroidered stitched.
Which I think we kind of get, not necessarily stitched, but the experience, we get that kind of vibe with the things, the experiments that we do see. Like, it seems like every girl or woman attending that academy has their own bespoke servant pet monster thing that they
Yes.
have created.
Yes. But what
And
I'm saying is that not only are they individual and bespoke, but they are also beautiful and embroidered.
yes. No, but I maybe not embroidered, but I feel like there probably is just based on our sample size of one, the flesh angel with the giant dong, it seems like there's a focus on aesthetic that
Yep.
we haven't necessarily seen at Radom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, that presents a stark contrast, and we see this stark contrast multiple times throughout the chapter to like the darkness underneath. The mass graves and the all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's before we get into that.
Yeah. I only had a couple other thoughts about like the arc title.
Okay,
Stitch in Time kind of makes you think of the fabric of space time, which
which
maybe implies
implies
there will be time travel in this arc.
space time travel. We're going to end up on the moon 400 years ago.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Um, there's also like you could get a stitch in your side when you're running, which being like an
Side doesn't
anatomy
run.
thing seems possibly relevant.
Possibly.
I feel
I
like
can
these
see
are
that.
less relevant
There's
sounding than our previous
stretches.
ones.
Yeah.
But definitely the chimney sweep dance, totally
Is
going to be a
going to
thing.
happen. Chim chim cheree.
All right. Do you have any more thoughts before we get into our plot recap?
Nope, I think we're good. So, previously on Twig, the lambs were sent away from Radom to hunt down an enemy of the Academy, and a Boyle protagonist, Genevieve Frey. They also need to take pills to let them survive away from Radom.
In Stitch in Time at 4.1, the lambs head to the post office to get their latest batch of pills. To their dismay, there are only enough pills to last a day or so, and a letter saying they need to return soon for their appointments.
Boo!
Sai suggests that they use this as an opportunity to focus and do their best work. Gordon suggests they split up and see what they accomplish. And so they do both of those things, Gordon and Sai teaming up and head off to do some quote-unquote recruiting.
In Stitch in Time 4.2, Gordon and Sai explore Kenford for a bit. They approach some girls and ask where they can find some shady types, quote unquote. Eventually, and with some manipulation from Sai, they send them to a hideout of some academy dropouts in the woods. They convince the dropouts to help them by promising them a reward for finding Genevieve, despite no actual reward existing. Later, they meet back up with the other lambs, only to discover that their dorm has been ransacked. A message in blood is left on the walls that read, "I have your real pills. G. Frey."
Yeah, this is a wild pair of chapters.
Yep.
Um,
Well, just a lot happens in
yes,
not that many words.
yes. And also a lot happens in not that many actions as well.
That is true.
Because it's like, they get there, they go to the post office, and that's the whole chapter. And then they like talk to some girls, and then talk to some other girls, and then go to their dorm, and that's the other chapter. But in just that basic framework, so much happens, and so many things are going on.
No, absolutely.
And the biggest thing isn't even Genevieve at all.
No,
It's
she
the
barely shows up.
yeah. But even like the hunt for her isn't the big thing. It's the cohesion of the lands that's the
Yeah,
main focus of this.
they're falling apart.
They need a friend.
Or there's too many friends. They need to go back to the basics.
Yes. So it basically starts out with them failing to catch Genevieve.
Yeah, they're all unhappy. They're all surly. They're all miserable.
Yeah.
Except for Sai, who's having a blast not being at Radom.
You know who's probably having the worst deal of it is probably Mary. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is Mary, uh, textually, because we know how much she hates failure.
Yep.
And she's the one who is letting it get to her the most, where she's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
actually like raging about the situation.
yeah, I mean, she's the one who brings up that like whole thing about teaching dogs and how she thought at first that Percy wanted her to train dogs and realized that that Percy was talking about training her like subordinates, and then realizing that he was talking about training her
Yes.
and like relating this to the current situation.
Hmm. Yeah, the quote was, tell a dog to jump for the stick and it will. The dog might really want that stick, but if you pull the stick away every time, the dog learns.
Yeah. If the dog knows it's never getting it, then it's not going to bother.
Yes. And this is something that Sai returns to several times in these chapters, this
Yeah.
idea that we need a stick to sink our teeth into. But they don't have that. Genevieve is pulling the stick away every time, and they are very much losing morale. And at the same time, getting the note and the pills from the Academy, it seems the Academy's losing faith in them too.
And I I'd like to add not just morale, but sign notes a few times. He doesn't trust the others as much right now.
That's true. Well, he says that about Gordon because of the whole Gordon and Shipman
Right, but
situation.
I feel like he
But
also
yeah,
means it as a greater thing. Like he's never really known how to read Helen.
hmm
And
yeah, Helen's definitely been acting in a way that he doesn't understand
yeah,
more than she used to.
yeah. And I love the personality she's developing. We'll get to that, but like she is really developing a personality.
Yep,
Um
yeah. The problem is that they're all growing up, and
yeah.
Sai needs to re-understand them all.
Yeah, I mean, getting older means you have more complex emotions and motivations and desires and wants.
Hmm.
The little inside out console in your brain is being upgraded and more little bits and bobs going on.
Yes,
But yeah,
yeah.
I
So,
didn't really get the vibe. You know, they say that the Academy is losing faith in them not succeeding, but
mhm,
I didn't get that vibe. I just got the vibe that the Academy needed them back for like their recalibration appointments more
right.
than like I feel
Yeah.
like the Academy would send them right back out after.
Yeah, probably. But certainly from their perspective, and especially Mary, they see this as like, we're doing a bad job, and the Academy sees that we're doing a bad job, and they don't trust us to do it, which is why they're sending the whelps and dog and catcher. And they don't even trust us to finish it, so they're just gonna pull us back in.
Yeah,
And so they're all despondent, and they're all disintegrating. Um, and Sai describes it as, we were losing our edge without opposition to keep us sharp, and without a practical test of our abilities. And he decides that he'd be willing to create the problem if necessary, which is what I was talking about when we were talking about the arc title
hmm
of him trying to be proactive and save nine stitches.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of a sucky situation where all these people are friends, and they were syncing so well before.
Well, it still feels like they're friends, and I kind of got
Oh yeah, they're
the
still getting
feel.
along.
It feels like they're getting along better. Just textually reading their interactions. It
Okay.
felt like there was less snarkiness and sniping at each other, or like less hostile sniping and snarkiness. And like the snarkiness that was there felt more friendly, but that might also be a product of the fact that they're feeling a bit distant. So they're like everybody's kind of making efforts to
Yeah.
connect better without it necessarily working.
Yeah.
Whereas just like if you're needling your sibling, you're not necessarily, you trust that they love you still. Whereas
Yeah.
here it's like, oh, I've got to like make an effort to be nice.
Yes. Yeah. And then the lack of that needling perhaps
Yeah, plays,
becomes a
feeds
rift
in.
and
Yeah,
on its own. Yeah.
absolutely.
So anyway, now we've got. I like how Sai decides to be like, let's make this an opportunity. This is great.
Which is also,
I can't tell whether Sai is actually like pleased about the situation or just pretending to be pleased in order to get
well,
the others on board.
I think Sai is pretty similar there too. Sorry, Gordon is pretty similar there. He's like, all right, now we have an opportunity to fix these rifts. And I like, maybe this isn't where you meant to be going with this, and correct me what you're talking, but I feel like like Gordon is also like, okay, we're drifting apart. This right now is an opportunity that we go back to basics, we solve these problems, and we come out of this better than before, and we
Yeah.
catch Genevieve Frey,
Hmm.
and everything goes back to being good.
Yeah. And I think it's fairly typical for both Sai and Gordon, where it's like they both see the problem, but Sai like just goes for it. He's like,
Yeah.
let's make this a thing. And then
Hmm.
Gordon is like, all right, now that Sai has brought it up, I'm going to come in, take charge, and like make it actually work.
Yeah. No, I agree.
um, so yeah. So we will see whether the next 24 hours result in great success or
Failure. Well,
great
isn't
failure.
it less than 24 hours now, considering they don't have their actual pills?
Oh yeah, because they don't have their actual pills, so they've already failed. Sorry, never mind.
But on the other hand, that just brings to mind that they have, in theory, access to someone else who can provide them with the pills or cure them altogether.
You mean to play nice with Genevieve?
Yeah,
You think that's going to happen?
I have no idea. Probably not.
I
But
think that the way things have been going, that seems very unlikely to be
no, but she's
even
Sai's
a
sister.
possibility. That's true. That's true.
And that comes up again where where Sai, talking to the postman, lies, but the lie is like, oh, we're here to see family. And the others are kind of like, Sai. Which means that Sai has probably brought up what he brings up at the end of the third arc. Like, oh, Genevieve is the closest thing I have to an actual sister.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So they're here to see family. They're going to have a big
Yep.
family reunion, get their pills back.
Yep. And then they're all going to join. They're going to form their own better resistance and take down the Academy system together.
Hooray! That would be very satisfying. But
Yep. By
unfortunately,
Arc 5, story's
we're
over.
only in Arc 4. If this was a short story like Claw is supposed to be, then maybe that would be
Plausible.
plausible.
That'd
Yeah.
be a really weirdly structured story. 3 arcs of doing whatever, 1 arc of finding a friend, and then 1 arc of rebellion.
Yeah, that sounds about
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. Just like I think that's kind of as much as I have to say about the whole Lambs
Yeah, I think so.
stuff. Well, there was some fun stuff going on with when Cy and Gordon went off recruiting. It was kind of like a little treasure hunt, like, go here, and then they'll send you there, and then they'll send you somewhere else. I liked what they were talking to the 3 girls. So there were the 3 girls who
Yeah.
were in
There's
the
2
cemetery.
groups of girls that they
Yes.
interact with.
So in my mind, I'm calling them like the 3 girls,
Yep.
which was the first ones, and then the dropout girls who were in the forest. This is what happens when they don't like give themselves names, is that you have to make up names for them.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, the 3 girls were pretty fun, especially the drunk one. And I really liked how Sai like kind of manipulated them by just like making obvious guesses and then watching their reaction.
Yeah, just like the most obvious like cold reading possible.
Yes. Like, so would the people who associate with the Academy be near the Academy? How did you know?
Are you reading minds here?
Yes. Anyway, it was very fun. I enjoyed that part a lot.
Me too. I thought both of these interactions were really fun in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of liked the one girl who's like, that's really too dangerous for you guys to go there. And it's like, oh, Sai's like, oh, she's probably a big sister. And he just pulls a knife. He's like, I'm fine.
Yep.
It's like,
Yep. I liked the part with the dropout girls because it gave us, like, there was this bit of discussion between Sai and Gordon
yeah,
that showed us some of their usual methodology. I'm just going to read it because it was fun.
sure.
Gordon says, "We can do this, like we always do. I propose a challenge, or see if they're betting types. Let them pick the contest. Hope they pick fighting, for me, or a gambling game for you to cheat at. Beat them, whatever they choose. Use that to get them to listen."
Yeah, no, it's great.
I especially like the, gambling game for you to cheat at, and,
Yep.
like, completely in stride. Anyway, they do neither. They just bribe them with money that doesn't even exist.
No, they don't. They don't have rewards. There is no bounty. If they had a bounty, like, I feel like they wouldn't be using dog and catcher and the whelps and the lambs if
Mm-hmm.
they were willing to actually spend real money on getting her back.
Yes.
It's like they have enough internal resources to figure it out on their own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but luckily for them, and
Yeah,
probably what Sai was going for. Wait, was it Sai or Gordon who brought up the money? I don't remember.
I don't
Probably
remember.
doesn't matter.
Either war. It's just they're both working in the sync and
Yeah,
vibing together, and this
yeah.
is the plan.
So luckily for them, and possibly even what they were aiming for, is that they don't need much convincing at all. So they're like, hey, want to make some money? I can't guarantee you that there is any money. In fact, probably there isn't, but wouldn't you like the
If there
slimmest possible
was
chance
money,
of there maybe being money? And they're like, honestly, we're so desperate, we'll take the tiny chance of there maybe being money.
yeah. I I wrote this down in the later part of the notes, but I liked these dropout girls in that I felt like they were Twig's answer to like the packs of like punk hooligans that like all those 80s sort of apocalyptic or
Yep.
dystopic movies have. Like they're down on the streets around a burning barrel trash fire, like drinking and doing drugs and being hooligans all around, and the main character gets into fights with them and all that. But it's this is Twig's
Or
answer to
recruits
that,
them.
or recruits them. But generally, they're there to serve as like irrational, crazy obstacles,
Hmm.
and like yeah, I felt this was Twig's answer to that.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
Down to like the weird hair and the tattoos and the which is very rebellious anarchy punk of the
Hmm.
but here it's just they biomod themselves.
Yes. I kind of wonder if these groups like always exist. Like there's always like a bunch of new dropouts willing to,
It's probably a rotation thing.
yeah. Or
Like
maybe
some
it's just
leave and
like a
some new
few
ones.
times a year, like a group will form and maybe they'll go in the woods or maybe they'll, who knows?
Maybe. I kind of imagine though it's a rotation as people drop out,
Yep.
they join, and then some people leave and new people come in.
Hmm.
It feels like then this academy, whatever Saint Cecily's or Dame Cecily's, is less strict about academy knowledge than Radham was, since they tried to stop Genevieve from leaving, whereas Dame Cecily's has gangs of dropouts who presumably still have academy knowledge.
That's true. I hadn't noticed that. That's very true. So
Unless
really, these dropouts should be
yeah,
the great enemies that we're trying to.
yeah, that's what it feels like. And I put in the notes, or I think Mary points out, oh, everybody here is too pretty. There's someone doing back alley prettiness, and I assumed that meant that was Genevieve doing that kind of stuff, um, selling and surviving and selling stuff from her lab and making people pretty for like some pocket cash. But realistically, it's probably some of these dropouts just doing stuff for people
Mhm. Or
scavenging on the
both.
edges, or both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was one other twist with those dropout girls,
Yeah.
which was that Sai, his real plan well, maybe not his real plan. He has this idea that, sending these dropout girls after Frey will result in Frey recruiting them.
Which means that they don't have to pay them.
Yes. And also this is, as usual, him being like, let's just make a mess and see what happens.
Yeah, this is shaking the box.
Yep. I'm not sure whether that was his plan all along or just him being like, this could happen, and if it does, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that. But I feel I think he thinks either way they are going to present obstacles. Because even if if Genevieve recruits them, they are going to be hostile to like any kind of authority or someone telling them what to do. They are going to be obstacles no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Even if nominally on Genevieve's side.
Yes. But what if Frey successfully recruits them, turns them into like these real effective henchwomen?
That seems unlikely, but possibly.
I'm just saying, if Sai can do it, then Frey can do it.
That is true. She is a wyvern.
Mm-hmm.
Then the last bit is I have your real pills. And then they talk about that. I'm really surprised that I have your real pills wasn't the end line of the chapter. It just feels like one of those cliffhangers that we've gotten before.
Mm-hmm.
And this makes me wonder.
does tend to do that. Like,
yeah.
He'll put like the real pithy mic drop line and then add a few paragraphs afterwards.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like,
oh, of course.
But yeah, that was definitely the big reveal.
Yep. And I wonder if that means that the postman is an ally of Genevieve, since he A, said that he hadn't seen Genevieve, and B, is the one who handed them the pills.
So you're thinking that the pills they got from the postman were fake?
Already, yes.
Interesting. Because I definitely assumed, I guess, that while she was ransacking their dorms, she grabbed the real pills and put fake ones down in their place.
Why would she bother putting fake ones down rather than just say, I have your pills, come talk to me?
That's a good point.
That was what made me think that. Just, it seems like extra effort to go through when the same result is to just say, hey, I have your pills.
Yep. Okay. Right. Maybe Mr. Postman is in on it. Maybe Mr. Postman
is actually Warren?
Yes.
Is that where you were going?
Yeah, just swap out a new body and...
you don't even need to swap out a body. Just have him have like a nice long high-collared shirt. Nobody would ever know.
I mean, they said that his handprint was 2 feet wide. I feel like that's a little bit big to not know.
No, they're just he's a big guy. Got big bones.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say before we move on to world building?
Nope. Let's charge right in. World building.
So first, I was very surprised by 3/4 of a year after joining us. It feels longer than I was expecting for Mary to have been part of the Lambs.
Oh, like 9 months have passed already?
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually Wildbow's stories are like 3 days long.
Yeah.
Is that where you were going with that idea?
A little bit, but it doesn't... I guess there's been a lot of time in between arcs, even if the arcs themselves are fast.
Yeah. And also the Sub Rosa, or the interviewing in the bowels prior to Sub Rosa took a very long time.
Yeah, but it's just, we don't see that, and I didn't really internalize that time difference there.
Yeah. Now it's winter.
And there's snow.
Yeah. One thing that I thought was interesting was they mentioned treated meats hung from chains.
Yes.
As a pest deterrent.
That sounds very gruesome.
It does. And also just like...
stinky?
Yeah. It's like normally you'd put up like, I don't know...
a fly strip?
Citronella candles or something.
No. You got like rotting meat. Well, I guess maybe it's not as rotting because it's treated.
Mm-hmm. But it's
like poisoned fresh steaks hanging.
Putting out like some honey or like a little dollop of peanut butter on a trap or something, that's not going to cut it. The pests here want steak.
What size pests are we having here also?
Well, big enough to want steak. So I'm imagining like mosquitoes the size of like a large dog.
Oh yeah,
for one.
deer fly the size of deers.
Yes.
Yeah,
Horsefly the size of horses,
absolutely.
etc. Houseflies.
Size of houses.
um, one thing I
I,
thought was interesting. So go ahead.
no, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
One thing I thought was interesting. Psy refers to Dame Cicely's
Yep,
academy as Victorian style.
I noticed that also.
And I was like, why? Because first of all, we decided that this era was Victorian, or, close enough to IRL Victorian as to not really be distinguishable. So I'm wondering if that means that this world is not as Victorian
Yeah.
as we thought, or if the Victorian era in this world is more like
Well, in our world,
previous than we
Victorian
thought.
ends in 1914, and
Does it?
it's followed by the Edwardian era. Yeah,
Okay. Well, see, even then, that's only like four. It's like less than a decade since then.
since. Yeah, which is a long period to be like, oh, that was in the past.
Yes.
So yeah, we're on Wikipedia, following Victorian, there is Edwardian,
Uh-huh.
which seems to overlap Victorian, since Victorian ends in 1914, and then Edwardian is 1901 to 1910. I guess King Edward had no real impact culturally. And there's First World War, which does not apply, and there's interwar Britain, which also does not apply. So I don't know where we are with.
And then there was the Elizabethan era,
Yeah, yeah,
which
just ended.
is not what it's called. Anyway.
No. But yeah. So Victorian probably means something different in setting,
Yes.
or something shorter.
Yeah. So I was like, this one word is just like raises so many questions.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think it probably implies that Victoria the Eternal is not as eternal as I was hoping.
Well, she has had her brain transplanted into a younger, more beautiful body with a different name.
With a different name.
Yes, but it is still her, Eternal.
So the Duke, who's taking over the Academy, who's 12th in line, is 12th in line to have his brain swapped out for Victoria's.
Naturally. That is how it
Naturally.
goes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, that's just part of being royalty, right?
Yes. It's essentially all a hive mind anyway.
Yep. Just close your eyes and think of the Empire, and you're good.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of royalty and so forth, another fascinating little detail was this Eastern Crown accent. What the heck does that mean?
The British Isles are in the East versus North America, so I'm assuming that's just what we hear as a British accent. Or like
so you
a
think
royal.
Eastern Crown is British and Western Crown is American?
Yeah.
Okay. So you came to a reasonable answer way faster than I did.
That's just how I assumed it. That's how I parsed that bit.
So like my first thought, Eastern Crown would be like Eastern UK, which isn't really a division of the UK that I am aware of. Usually it's like Northern and Southern and then like individual cities from what I know. But that was my first thought, Eastern UK. And then I thought, well, the Crown territories are essentially the entire English-speaking world.
Yeah.
And so the British Isles are in the middle,
mm-hmm.
and North America is to the west.
So you think she's affecting like a Indian Raj British
Exactly.
accent?
That was my next thought.
I did not assume that, simply because I feel
I
like
didn't
she's
assume
trying
that. That's
to put
just where
on
my brain
airs.
went.
She's trying to put on airs and be as close to like as close to the royal court as possible.
Mm-hmm. I also want to point out that in the audiobook, the Eastern Crown accent is just North American English, but with a real snooty attitude.
I do not buy that one.
Yeah, I like your idea. My next thought was going to be that it was like maybe Crown accent is North American English and Eastern Crown accent is Eastern North American, like New England sort Bostonian? Of area. But I think your idea makes more sense.
But now I'd like to imagine her as a Bostonian.
Yes.
I am not going to pretend to be able to do that accent, but I'm sure all of you can imagine that.
Yes.
And yeah, We're talking about the role of women in the story again.
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I think that's going to be a big thing in this arc
I think so.
because of Dave Sicily's.
Yeah.
But we do get this stuff about women who go to the academies need permission and money from their parents. And if they mess up even once and their funding gets cut off and they go home and they get introduced to a nice fellow to marry and that's their life.
And
Which
again,
goes to show... Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just saying, that feels so different still than Radom.
You think?
I do. Like this feels like this elite little preparatory school where they're learning like fancy stuff and but nothing still all that actually fundamentally useful, I think.
Hmm.
Whereas
Which
Radom
is why they
is
don't need to be purged when they drop out.
probably like it's this like it feels like this cutthroat but fashionable place rather
Mm-hmm.
than Radom, which is like integral to the war effort and you know clearly has more women students and doesn't have this like wealth thing because Lillian doesn't have the same situation where women have to go there or whatever. It's I don't know. It's just the feeling I got is that this is a much more specialized place where women who want to be presumably aristocratic women who want to be more than just, some aristocrat's wife go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I kind of got the impression that Lillian was talking about all academies. She does say women who go to the academies rather than women who go to Dame Cicely's. And so I just assumed this was true across the board. But
Maybe, but
I think that it makes more, it seems more what I would expect if it was specifically this one. I mean, it kind of would be what I'd expect everywhere, but like
not
this sort of
necessarily just this
hardcore...
one because they talk about or they allude to a rival academy, whatever, Lady
Mm-hmm,
Eleanor's or St. Eleanor's or whatever it was called.
mm-hmm.
But it feels like a specific kind of academy rather than like
Yeah,
all
rather than just
academies.
everyone. I was
Yeah.
mostly thinking of this in sort of a comparison to like how we talked about how women are being more accepted in the academy itself.
Hmm.
Knowledge is knowledge or whatever they
Right.
were saying a couple
Yeah.
chapters ago, and how like in the academy women can succeed, but if they drop out, then it's back to
Yeah.
the old ways.
Can I also point out that Mothmont was pretty evenly split, it seemed, between boys and girls, and that was a feeder school to the academy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It feels like there's a disconnect in a way between those thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I think that there can be a disconnect, like in the population of this world,
Yeah,
rather than just like, oh, a disconnect in us reading it.
for sure.
Um, I don't know. I guess we'll see, but it
Different
certainly
parts of
is.
the world
It
operating in
certainly is.
different
Mm-hmm.
in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly is a shitty position for these girls to be in.
Oh, definitely.
That's for sure. Anyway, let's
Yeah.
move on to our locations.
We have one big location here.
Yes. One location with many things to talk about in it.
Yep. So
Kenford.
Kenford.
Finally found out the name of the place. Not a particularly interesting or like there's not a lot of stuff you can get out of a name like Kensford.
Looking at it real quick earlier, it doesn't relate to anywhere in the real world. It doesn't seem to be anywhere called Kensford. I mean, to the point where the top result is the Twig Wiki.
Ha, nice.
But just goes to show, because that is a name that sounds entirely plausible as being any number of small towns in the English-speaking world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, with a name like Kensford, the first thing that you'll think is this is a place where there's a river crossing.
Yep.
Which is
And
what
where
most towns
Ken,
ending in
of
Ford
Ken and Barbie,
mean.
establishes his house.
Yes. Or someone named Ken, or the king, or maybe
Mhm.
some Kine or something. But essentially, it's just like, oh, it's a town on a river.
Yep. And I thought it was interesting that they talk about how, the academy is not the heart of this place, but it's still the life and blood of it.
Mm.
And that, unlike Radom, which is built around the academy, the academy is like offset and there's like commerces and stuff. But if you removed the academy, this town would die a slow death.
Whereas Radham, if they remove the academy, everyone
It
would
would just
die
be gone.
because
Yeah.
nobody would be putting the stuff in the rainwater
Yep.
to
Yeah.
make them live.
And I feel like it's certainly possible that that's accurate for Kensford, but I can also see it, were there some glorious revolution of some kind and everybody turned to mechanical arts. If someone were to build a factory in Kensford, it would survive, whereas Radham would not, with the academy removed.
Mm, yes.
And I liked the line, the streets were gray cobblestone and lighter gray slabs of concrete, covered in white snow and the black grime the wagons and carriages had dredged up. And that's just like, it's telling us right at the very beginning that this town has a hidden dark underbelly. It's pretty, it's got snow covering it up, but there's grime and darkness underneath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he calls it a subtle hideousness.
Yep.
Which I thought was great. I also thought it was interesting. Like, he talks about it being storybook, which, makes it feel like sort of picturesque and so forth. But then he calls it quaint, but in a very controlled and calculated way.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting.
I can absolutely see it being that way. We're building this town, or we have this town, we have this, like, academy for rich girls. It has to look pretty. It has to look picturesque. It has to look quaint because we need the girls to keep coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cynical approach to attracting people.
Mm-hmm. And I like the way that Side described it, where he said it was a town that embraced the old-fashioned. But so many people romanticized history and forgot how very bloody it was.
You mean gutters running red during exams?
Yep. That was a cool detail. And I think they said that was like the case in Radham also.
Yeah, but here it feels more dramatic because it's a quaint, picturesque town, whereas Radham is a horrifying
so essentially, we've got
slum.
this town that's like very beautiful and very ominous with like horrible disgustingness right under the surface.
Yep.
Or to quote Helen, so pretty.
And I really feel this is Helen also being sassy. It's It's the personality she's developed and has been showing off and does show off more here. I don't know if Sai has picked up on it necessarily yet, but that is the vibe I got, that she's like, oh, this is fucked up, but it's really cute.
Yeah.
So
I kind of think that Helen is very used to things that are like ominous and weird. And like Helen herself is like beautiful and also like terrifying. And so she could see a whole city that's beautiful and terrifying and be like,
oh, that's nice.
This is great.
Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff about the layout of the city. We mentioned already that the academy is not the heart, but the kind of off to the side. It's in the northeast corner. It mentions that all of the buildings in the entire city except for the academy are only 1 story tall.
Which allows the academy to loom over it.
Yes. But also allows buildings to be hidden behind hills.
Yes.
Sai says there's an ingenious usage of hills and terrain to hide things like bone works and crematoriums and
mass graves that we encounter.
That mass grave, yeah.
Yeah, the stitch works.
Yeah, so I imagine you're like going through this city and it's just like there's a hill on one side, hill on the other side, and then a big old tower sticking up over the horizon.
I pictured the academy, this like, not a tower, but this big yeah, essentially a Victorian mansion. Something like, let me see if I can find a picture.
This is an audio podcast,
Yeah, but yeah, just Wikipedia, Carson Mansion. Just something like that. I'm going to share it with you, but any listener can hear it. I just shared it with you. But just as a general aesthetic, this kind of like...
Carson Mansion. Oh yeah, I definitely think that looks about right.
I mean, it was the first result when I Googled Victorian Mansion. But that was kind of exactly what I was picturing. And this is what I'm seeing looming over the place. Maybe bigger with like more wings and all, but it's that general aesthetic.
But that still has a tower though.
Yes, but it's not.
It's not okay. So it's not like a huge tower that looms over everything. It's like a huge building with a little tower on it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was picturing when you said a tower, I was kind of imagining like a stone keep looming.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, it's also to note that Kensford is gets 7 feet or several feet of snow a year.
Hmm.
Which to me places it on the Great Lakes.
No, I'm pretty sure they said it was far away from.
Did they?
Think so.
I could have missed that.
I don't remember. They have been going for a while. Anyway, Kensford is definitely in a northeast sort of place, getting several feet of
Hmm.
snow in the early winter.
Yeah, maybe they're in New Brunswick or something.
Aha. Well, we get
Um,
several feet in the early winter here sometimes.
not this past year. Well, last year we did. This year we did not.
Hmm.
This winter we got no snow.
In the 20s, we probably got lots.
Yeah, I can see that. And biological horror doesn't have the same impact on the climate.
No, in fact, they put bacteria in the skies to seed the snow clouds.
Yep, yep. So it's better for the environment to live in Twig World than it is to live in our world. We
Obviously.
should all aspire to be there.
I like their description of the main street, which they say is the town's heart rather than the
Yep.
academy, and how it just has like lots of very, very tiny shops.
See, that's a very specific aesthetic. It's so like any of those small college towns or, in the Northeast or like any small tourist town. Just everybody has that main street. There's
Mhm.
like a little bistro, there's coffee shop, there's an antique shop or two or three. There's like a little pet grooming place. It's just every town has these like same stores that are
Yep.
small businesses, locally owned, and it really creates a very specific feel and aesthetic for this town that is undercut by what we know about the town,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is, that it has an academy, which means that there's some fucky stuff going on.
Yes. So let's talk about the academy for a bit.
Sure. So it's called Dame Sicily's, which I definitely first read as Dame Cycly.
Dame Unicycle.
Yeah, like when I was like, oh, cycles of life? Sure, that makes sense. Wait, no, that does not make sense. Um, but yeah. So I looked up the name Cecily or Sicily because it's spelled differently from how I would have expected Cecily to be spelled. And first, Saint Cecilia was a virgin martyr of Rome and is a patron saint of musicians. And there's
Hmm.
Dame Cecily Saunders, which might be slightly more related, but not because she was born in 1918. So no, but she was a nurse and a social worker.
Okay.
So I
So
think this. Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, that's what I had to say. Besides
Okay.
saying that I don't feel like there's much to tie
So
into the real world
I
here.
have two things to say about this. First of all, okay, three things. First of all, my
Four things.
assumption was that Dame Sicily is some current aristocrat who happens to be funding this place.
Entirely reasonable.
So I didn't
Makes
even think
sense.
to look up like, oh, what
Yeah,
famous person maybe this was named after. It's obviously like the lady who lives in the manor over there, sort of thing.
and who is like funding this finishing school?
Yes. Secondly, Cecily, Ceci, is the name that's short for Cecilia,
Yeah,
but Sicily, Cice,
it's not a name, is it?
is not a name, it's a plant.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Sicily, it's the same thing as myrrh, or it's a kind of myrrh.
Oh, interesting. I missed that entirely. Probably because I mistyped Sicily into like the way it's spelled as the name when I was doing research. Interesting. What is its uses? It can be used to flavor akavit and has a similar flavor to anise. Okay, interesting. Anyway, what was your number 3 thing?
So my number 3 thing was based on you calling out Saint Cecilia, because remember Warren, how he got his head cut off and yet survived and is still around.
Yeah,
Saint Cecilia was sentenced to death by beheading, and they cut her head like 90% of the way off,
nearly
and then
headless Cecily.
gave it up as a bad job, and she lived for another like several days after that, according to the story. This is not like
3
serious
days, I
history.
believe. Yeah.
Um, So I thought that was an interesting call because there was that parallel of like being beheaded and then living on
That is
afterwards.
interesting. Yeah.
Um, so anyway, definitely, I think that means that Warren is a Roman musician.
Yep.
Uh,
And I thought it was interesting that this academy is famously cutthroat, even in the context of the academy world.
mhm. Like
Um,
we saw how cutthroat things were
Radham,
at
but that's
Redham.
this nice, casual,
Hmm.
friendly picnic compared to this place.
Like they were complaining about Sub Rosa. Like I think Sub Rosa would have fit in great here. Maybe
Oh,
this
she
is
would have.
where she
No, no, no.
studied.
She failed. Sub Rosa got the fact that Sub Rosa got turned into her own to an experiment is proof she doesn't have it. What it takes to succeed here.
Sure. Yep.
Because I'm sure these girls that are like, oh, dropouts and being sent home or whatever, this last hurrah, they're the ones who weren't turned into experiments. I'm sure there's an entire subset of Cecily's students who have been experimented upon and turned into horrors.
Yeah. And then there's also the mention of its academic rival, which
Yep,
is probably also equally cutthroat, Lady Eleanor's, who I assume is another aristocrat.
makes
Or maybe
sense.
it's also named after the plant that grows in Lothlorien.
Naturally.
Mm-hmm.
No, that makes sense. If it's the local aristocratic rich woman funding school for girls, that seems like a thing that happened. I thought it was interesting that in a way the hierarchy seems more subtle than Radham's. So Radham, you know who everybody is and where they stand because of their like doctor's outfit, their doctor's
Right, with
coat.
like the white coats for the
Yeah,
students and the black coats for the professors and the gray coats for the
exactly.
in betweens, whatever they're called.
Yeah. Whereas here, it seems like the students' work speaks for themselves.
Mm.
Like they're not wearing necessarily anything that differentiates them. It's like the big thing that's following them around is what tells people how good they are, how important they are, how successful
Hmm.
they are.
Yes. How beautifully embroidered it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you
Um,
think like the professors are also walking around with
I imagine so.
especially professorly monsters?
It's a way to like cow the students because I'm sure there's a lot of like jockeying for power even against professors.
Mm.
Like I
I'm sure the
don't imagine.
professors are also jockeying against each other.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's a horrible place to live. I'm sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I know they talk about it in the chapter, but like even at the very beginning, I was thinking how smart it is for Genevieve to actually hide here because she fits right in.
Hmm. Like the postman said, I
Exactly,
see a girl like that every day. 20
exactly.
girls like that every day.
Not the one you're talking about, but I see them all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, this is a good place for her.
Yeah. And we've already talked about the mass grave and the stitchworks. Anything else you want to talk about location wise?
I don't think so. Let's move on to our monster corner.
Play.
Boys and girls of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange?
Usual thanks to Monster Corner. All the
The
usual
Magnifier
thanks
and
to
Danny
Ben.
Elfman, yes.
Correct.
Thank
So
you to
first
both.
monster that we hear are the meat trees,
I suppose
which
those
are,
count as monsters, yeah.
I think so, and they are ubiquitous, apparently.
I liked how Sai says meat trees in both the sense of trees that wheat grow on and also gibbets.
Yep. Yep. I don't have much to say about the meat trees, except someone had spoiled their existence to us at some point, but it's still fun to see them in the flesh, as it were.
Yeah, well, we've seen meat trees before.
Have we?
Yes, I think so. We've definitely seen meat that has been grown on trees before.
I don't think that we have, but
We
I could be
definitely
mistaken.
have because I've seen them before and I've only seen them in this story. Um,
Yes, but you have read more of this than I have.
oh, I wouldn't remember it if it was not very, very plot relevant. And so far, these trees have not been super
Plot
plot relevant.
relevant.
We've definitely seen meat trees before, but Sai points out that they're everywhere here.
Yeah, which sounds
Um,
real gross.
I wonder if it's the same meat that they're using as a pest repellent.
Yeah, I was wondering that also. They take it off the tree, then treat it, and then like hang it on chains.
I figure they probably do because if they have meat trees, then they won't bother like shipping
Yeah,
in from some
branch
butchery or
somewhere.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Another
other,
little one I just wanted to quickly
yeah,
mention was the life forms in the dump,
yep, those are
just
just
like
normal
swimming
rats and
around
ants and
eating.
flies, but they're just too mundane to be noticed and talked about.
Yes, except, as we've mentioned before, flies are the size of houses.
Yeah.
Um, and so really it's just a big living mass of stuff that has a bit of garbage in
Yep, almost certainly. It sounds horrifying.
it. I'm sure it is horrifying.
It's probably,
I hope we
yeah.
don't go exploring the dump because,
I'd rather go visiting the Stitchworks than the dumps.
yes, please, Wild Bow.
um, and the other monster that we get like in vivid focus is this flesh angel that I think Mary almost runs into,
Hmm.
turning a corner. It's quote, a large humanoid monster built like an angel, with wings of flesh, chest thrust out by matter of design, chin high so that it looked down on everything around it. It was naked, and its limp member dangled right at Mary's eye level, bigger around than my leg, and as hairless as a baby's. Which
And
is,
Mary goes, "Eep."
eep,
That was hilarious.
it sounds grotesque.
It does. It also sounds like fantastic as far as like, showing off your aesthetic creations
Oh,
goes.
sure, yeah. I'm a little bit curious whether this was written, slight pale spoiler here, but it has a little bit of a similar reminiscent vibe to the Promenade chapters when Wildbow was like sick writing and has a little bit more out there descriptions of things, the bondage hamster and whatnot. Like it felt similar to that, so I kind of wonder whether Wildbow was not feeling 100% when he wrote this chapter.
Maybe, but I think it's just hilarious. And also, I especially liked Helen's take, which was just like, wow,
Someone was lonely.
someone was lonely designing that monster. Oh.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. In terms of historical references, I think you
Yep.
pulled one out.
Sai says, every pretty young woman was really a witch, ready to thrust unwitting children into ovens. And, alluding to, I think, especially Hansel and Gretel, but
Yep.
any number of stories where the witches are capturing children and cooking them. It's interesting, though, because the idea here is that every pretty young woman is a witch, whereas classically, storybook witches, and we're in a storybook setting, as Saya said, are old hags.
Yes, and especially the one in Hansel and Gretel is explicitly a
An
very
old
old
hag.
woman. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
Although,
interesting that that side devolves to that, or devolves is not
yes.
the right word, but goes to that immediately.
Well, I mean, this is a town full of pretty young women, and we
Of
haven't met
course, of
any very
course.
old women yet.
Well, we could have. They don't look it because they've used Academy Sciences to look young.
Yes. And also, their monsters that they're carrying with them are essentially traveling ovens.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Shove kids in there.
Yeah.
Oh, good lord, sorry.
You okay?
Yeah, just fading.
All right, let's plow through this then.
Yeah.
Characters. Sylvester.
Is super happy to be out of Radom.
Or
And
pretending to be.
I think he is.
I think
And
he's pretending. I mean, I think he's glad to be out of the bowels and the
yeah.
interview thing.
So, do you mind elaborating why you think he's pretending?
Because I think he's like trying to counteract the morale of
Okay.
being unable to find Genevieve. I
Just
think
like,
he's being
oh, we're
like,
living our
well,
best
this
life.
sucks, but at least we're out of Radom.
Yeah, I can see that.
At least we're not doing the last thing, which was even worse. So anyway, I thought he was just like putting on a brave face
I can
rather
see
than
that.
actually being genuinely excited about where they were. But I mean, it's Sylvester; he can be both.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
We already mentioned the thing about seeing Genevieve's family.
Yep.
Um,
I thought this phrase, you scared of them, to Lillian talking about all the girls there, and he specifically says, I taunted her. And I'm wondering whether, because taunt feels as a word a lot more vicious than that felt.
You think it's vicious? I think this is just his usual needling.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yes, the fact that Sai's narration uses the word taunt feels inaccurate to the actual tone of
Okay,
what it is. What I'm saying is just I feel like Sai is not being honest to himself in what he's doing there, and it's not an important line. It's not a big thing. It's just Sai. It's just another instance of Sai being an unreliable narrator, even of his own thoughts.
sure. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think taunted sounds out of place to me personally. I think
Okay,
that's.
to me it just
I would not feel that taunted was inaccurate to describe just friendly needling.
okay. To
But
me it does. Like I feel like
sure.
taunt is very specifically hostile in a way that teasing isn't.
Okay. Well,
Please, dear audience, weigh in on this.
yes. Very important debate. This is our new discussion question.
Is this
Taunt or not
taunting or is
taunt?
this teasing? Or rather, not is this taunting or is this teasing, but does taunt have an innately hostile element to it?
Yes. And also, if it does, is it a regional difference?
That's an interesting point, too. It could very well be.
Hmm.
Um, I
Anyways.
thought I thought it was interesting, and this plays into what we were talking about earlier about the growing disconnect
Mhm.
of the lambs, where Sai kind of sees them growing up as losing their edge, or at least being at risk of losing it.
Yeah. Or at least this being like a really important time to not lose it.
Yeah, and I think this is a result of Sai still being shook by A, Gordon's interactions with Shipman, and
Mhm.
B, the realization that he did not pick up on the fact that other people had had crushes.
Yeah, okay. I
Um,
mean, I think that these are both like little um instances of showing sort of more deeper train of thought rather than it just being like that one conversation resulting in him still
oh, I
having this.
agree with you. I agree with you. I think Sai here is afraid of the changes that are coming, and like
Hmm.
just in terms of who the lambs are as they grow up. Children are simpler than teenagers
Hmm.
in many ways, and Sai has grown comfortable with who they are and does not yet know who they're going to be.
Yes. And certainly he's losing his edge in regards to understanding who they
The,
are and
yeah,
how they work.
and I
Um,
think that is what I was trying to say with the whole like crush line, not picking up
okay.
on that. It's just
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's symptomatic of him not getting who they are anymore,
Hmm.
or being afraid that he won't as they get older.
Yeah. Hmm. Certainly he's concerned about it. He
Yeah,
like it's an important thing that he sees coming.
exactly.
I like the way he described it. He said these were the years when we would be coming into our own. We'd be forging our identities and adapting our fit in the group. Um,
As long as there is still a group.
as long as there's still a group and they're not, drifting apart and splitting up.
Yeah, which is made very literal by him not wanting to split up the group
Hmm.
when they're investigating things.
Yeah, Gordon's like, we should split up. And Sai's like, no, we need to be more cohesive. And Gordon is
And
like, we can be
yes,
more
I
cohesive by
agree with
splitting up.
you. I agree with you very much, which is why we're going back to the basics.
Yes. It's a good plan.
Yep,
Yeah. Gordon handles this really well.
I think so. Oh, it's why Gordon is the leader, right?
Yes. I feel like we've discussed all this as a group stuff here.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if we talked about like there had been spats. Feels like a very understated statement. If Sai is like actively reminding them not to fall into old patterns, it seems like likely that spats was worse than just we argued.
You think they were having like full on.
Silent treatment and not talking to each other. Yeah,
I didn't feel like it had gotten that far yet, but
maybe not.
certainly is possible. If it has gotten that far, then Sai's got a lot of work cut out for
And
him
Gordon
to
has a
get
lot of
things.
work.
Mhm.
Yep.
I wonder if Jamie and Helen and Mary and Lillian are also picking up on it and trying to counteract it in their own way.
Almost certainly. I mean, they're all, except maybe Jamie, but all of them are, in theory, trained at social manipulation. So it would be very surprising if they're not picking up on it. Well, maybe not Lillian, but Mary and Helen should absolutely be picking up on it and are probably doing their own projects to rebuild cohesion.
Mhm.
Yeah. I thought I got a kick out of Mary finally seeing the appeal of Academy life when hearing how cutthroat this place is.
She's like, I see what it is. It's a way to get glory and
Yeah.
money and power.
And I like that.
And that sounds like a good reason to do this.
Yeah. I didn't get it before, but yeah, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mary and Lillian will be entering professorship together.
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting. So I noticed that Mary has been thinking about Percy a lot recently.
And I think that plays into the spats we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. And also the disintegration, because
yeah,
Mary's been here, as you pointed out, for 9 months. Like, she's not new anymore. And like Gordon said, that the original Lambs project with just him, Gordon, Cy, and Jamie, and occasionally Helen, was only 2 years ago.
Yeah. It's basically, she's not necessarily as integrated into the fabric of them, but she can't be that far off.
Yeah, like she's not that much newer than the others at this point.
And I mean, Lillian probably was a month or two ahead of her, realistically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, until they bring someone else on to the Lambs, I'm sure Mary is always going to feel like she's new, even if she isn't.
Yes. But Cy still sees this as a imminent threat every time she thinks of Percy.
That's true.
So yeah.
That is true.
I think that's interesting.
We already talked about Helen here.
That's her sassy attitude.
Yeah, just that's very much the personality she's developing.
Mm-hmm.
It's this like dry, sardonic, sarcastic. Like, yeah, dry is the best way to describe it, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't think Cy has yet really twigged onto it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I hope he never does, because it's hilarious every time.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. And Gordon, we mentioned, he's got a good handle on the situation and he's got good leadership. I thought it was funny when he didn't want to balance on the wall and Cy said he wasn't one for style and panache.
Which I don't believe that for 1 second.
He's like, he's already got so much style and panache.
He doesn't need to.
He doesn't need to walk on the wall.
Yeah. And also, walking on the wall is such a, like, little kid thing. And I think that's showing that Gordon is a little older, a little more mature.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I'll still walk on top of a wall if I...
Yes, but you are a child at heart. No, but I mean, someone trying to appear older and more mature is less likely to be walking on a wall than someone who is still, like,
yes.
You know,
style and panache.
Exactly. Yeah, he's handling the Lamb situation with really good leadership skills. Soft skills, as they were.
Yes. Gordon should be in charge of the academy.
That'd be bad for him.
It'd be bad for him, but it'd be good for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he has enough of the ruthlessness to, like, enforce his will in a way. Like, he wouldn't be naive about it.
Yep.
All right.
Also, we should mention Jamie.
Yeah.
She had a couple of good moments here, teasing Lillian, taunting Lillian by repeating her exact words back to her.
Teasing.
Like, what was I saying? You were saying this and this and this and this.
Exactly.
And she's
I bet
like,
it wasn't just words.
Enough of that.
I bet it wasn't just words. I bet it was also, like, exact intonation and everything.
Yep. Completely voice matched.
Yep. And I thought it was sweet that he was protecting the postman.
Like,
you know, giving him information that would protect him
in
the conversation.
Genevieve wouldn't murder him for info.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Jamie's Jamie's always
Jamie's
the
the
one who
best of
does
them.
that. He always thinks of, like, make sure
The
everyone's okay.
collateral.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel like Sai did it in the first arc more.
Yeah, I think they all do in their own way, but Jamie does it all the time.
Yes, that is true.
He's the sensitive soul.
Yep.
Yeah. In terms of other people, I think we've talked about the 3 drinking girls
A little bit.
a little
I just
bit.
felt like their dialogue felt a little bit like a pack hunting and cornering. You know, they're outmatched by Sai and Gordon,
Mhm.
but they don't know that they're outmatched, and they didn't know. And it felt like they were trying to isolate one of them and like cut them down just via the
Yep.
dialogue.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting because, like, in this town, I'm assuming there aren't a lot of, like, children.
No.
And so they wouldn't be, like, taunting children normally. But I guess they probably do this to each other.
Oh, I'm
Just like,
certain. Yeah, this is just their natural operating. These 3 girls are friends, and they hang out, and they taunt and torment and torture other groups of girls
mhm,
operating in whatever social hierarchy they're in.
yep.
And then, presumably, when they're not doing that, they're doing that internally to each other, but less viciously because they're friends.
Yes. Yep.
Um,
I
yeah,
did
not
want to
much.
mention.
Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just said I didn't have much more to say. So,
One thing we haven't talked about at all, but I felt is kind of worth bringing up somewhere, and here I feel is as good a place as
sure.
any, is the baths.
Yes.
So these drinking girls, the 3 of them, before they mentioned the dropout girls, they mentioned the baths as
Yeah.
local troublemakers that Cy and Gordon might be interested in. And they sound interesting enough. I don't know if they'll show up later or
Well, we
not.
get so much information on them that it feels like we have to see them, at least on some level.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's so much weight given to them in the text of the chapter that, or like so much volume dedicated to them, that it'd be weird if we don't get them somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Or like there's
I
no
mean, like,
payoff.
it could just be some good background, like,
Sure.
world building, but it does feel like they're being introduced.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
And it's like, there's 4 brothers and a girl. They drive in 3 times a week. They drink and fight and make noise and flirt
Don't
with the
actually do
ladies.
all
And
that much bad things.
yeah, certainly they're not as bad as the dropouts because they're like, yeah,
Exactly.
we don't feel like we can introduce you to the dropouts, but we definitely feel fine telling you about the bats.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, I feel like they might be important later. I don't know.
Mhm.
So I figure we should probably bring them up.
I agree. Now, we talk about the dropout girls, but we've already said literally everything that we have to say about them.
Mm-hmm. Except for the fact that we got a name for the lead one. Her name is Ronnie.
That is true. Oh, and I guess the fact that all of them are on like a last hurrah before their parents come to like pick them up or disown them.
Yeah. So they're all like really in a bad place. They're just like,
Yeah.
everyone else is like, oh, criminals and bad sorts and mean streak and whatever. Like, they're very terrifying or whatever. It's like, these are just like, I mean, I suppose if you were like, had nothing to lose, you would be dangerous and scary and whatever.
Oh, I
But
think they are.
but they really are super pathetic.
Oh yeah, but they're clearly putting on so much. I don't want to say putting on airs. That's not the right word. I'm losing the right word because I'm tired. But they're this is like this mask that they've put on and adopted and like kind of incorporated this
Mm-hmm.
violence and resistance and rebellion against the system.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, we know that the Academy girls are vicious and violent and brutal, and this is just them outside of that system and without whatever little restraints the Academy would have put on them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, obviously, the big character that we really have is Genevieve Frey, who does not show up but really dominates the place, dominates the
Yes.
narrative.
Mm-hmm. Just as she intended.
Oh, absolutely.
We did mention a few things about her, but I
Yeah.
think, the interesting thing is at the end when they're comparing notes before they find
Yep.
the mess she made in their dorm, you pulled this out, I think, that
Yep.
she had that she had that she had stolen some equipment from the academy to set up a lab, and it was equipment necessary for vat-grown life, big vat-grown life, and equipment necessary for working with microscopic life.
Both of which are utterly terrifying.
Yes, and also putting them together. I
Yeah.
think one of the lambs was just like, "How does that work?" I
Well,
don't even know if she's up to something or if she's just like,
well, she's
what can I steal that will like
well. The thing
make
is,
a big impression?
she is Psy plus the academy knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, at the most simplistic here, I'm going to say she's doing this Rube Goldberg machinery of like stitched and
Mm-hmm.
biomonsters and plagues and all that. At the worst, she could very well be building like plague
Mm-hmm.
carriers and all that kind of thing to
Sure. I think that from the perspective of her being like Psy, it's more
yeah,
likely that she stole the equipment
in the hopes
to
that
get the
someday,
reaction of people seeing that equipment stolen
yeah,
than to actually use it for anything in particular. But
well, and also to have it in case the need comes up.
yeah.
Yeah, rather than having a big old plan.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that is the actual last line of the arc, or not the arc, sorry, the chapter, is, and as she knows we're staying here, then she's been watching our every move from the beginning,
Yes.
which we knew from
Mm-hmm.
the previous enemy chapter, but
Yeah.
still, it's interesting to get that
Mm-hmm.
from the Lamb's perspective.
I was actually really glad that that got resolved
Mm,
because, like, the dramatic irony of us knowing that
yeah.
Genevieve knows what they're up to and the Lambs not knowing that, like, was tense for these two chapters, but I'm glad that they're on the same page about that now.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to talk about? Different characters? Anybody that we missed?
Did we miss anybody?
We missed the postman, but I don't think he has anything to say.
No, except that maybe he was in on the.
Maybe he was in on it.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
I don't know. I
Because
guess we'll see. I
well,
look forward to the next couple chapters.
the reason I think he has something to do with it, besides the reasons I have already stated, is that they make a big point of asking him if anybody has like asked about these things. And he's very adamant that no. You know, and it's like, why would the narrative dedicate time to that if not, well, I guess to like build up towards the reveal that like, oh, these are fake. Like, how did she manage that?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yep.
Very exciting. All right.
Right.
On to the discussion question, which we couldn't think of a good one, so we're just going to continue with the previous
The old
one,
one.
which was if the Lambs had to choose their project names based on what they were aspiring to rather than
Yep.
what they're being designed for, what
What
names would
would
they
it be?
choose? We've gotten some great answers already, and
But
I'd
we'd
really
love to
like to
have
see some more
more.
answers.
We very much would love to see more.
Mm-hmm. Now,
You know what?
even though
Wombo, feel free to contribute an answer to that one too.
oh, bold.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, but so we're not ending the current discussion question. However, I discovered that I made a mistake last time.
How dare you?
And I forgot to copy a response we got from YouTube to our old discussion question.
Which
So
was
the old discussion question that we answered last time was twofold. Firstly, what project names would Lillian and Mary have? And secondly, which one of the Lamb's abilities would you want to have? And so we got a
right.
response from Jordy Robinson on YouTube.
So Jordy says, I'd go with Project Shepherd for Lillian, smiley face. She loans her human knowledge to the lambs, both in the sense of offering a more normal perspective and her scientific acumen. Additionally, she is the most aligned with the Academy, as the only one who volunteered to be here.
And also, I like Project Ariadne for Mary. She presents as a little girl, but is a brutally efficient predator with a proclivity for dangerous threads.
I like that.
I love that a lot.
Yeah.
And they also say, not to spoil, and I don't think this is spoilery for us really, not to spoil, but as experiments, the lambs have sufficient downsides to their abilities that I would not want any of them.
Valid,
Fantastic.
fair.
I I think I'd go with Lillian, as I'm currently a bit annoyed at myself for my work ethic at present, and holy shit, she has some drive. And is just canonically a smart cookie, to the point of being a genius.
That is very true. Thank you, Jordy Robinson, for your answer, and apologies for missing it last time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, yes, she is canonically a smart cookie and a genius.
Absolutely.
I really like Lillian. We haven't hardly seen anything from Lillian these chapters. She gave a bit of information about the academy, but yeah, I like Lillian a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, go forth and answer discussion questions.
We appreciate it. So, everybody, thank you for listening. We hope you'll continue along with us on this trip into Twig, which you can read along with us at twigserial.wordpress.com. And if you do, or even if you don't, please go to Wildbow's Patreon at www.patreon.com/Wildbow and support him. It's how we can produce all these great stories and settings. Please leave your answers to our discussion question in our Reddit thread or in the Doof Discord or on YouTube or on Twitter or whatever.
Just write it on a rock and throw it into the sea and hope for the best.
Throw it through Dante's front window.
You can reach us at totwigpodcast@gmail.com, totwigpodcast on the platform formerly known as Twitter, a Reddit thread in r/parahumans, and our discussion thread in the Doof Discord, doofmedia.com/Discord. Kind thanks to them, as always, for letting us squat in their Discord server.
Next episode, we will cover Stitch in Time 4.3 and 4.4.
Woo!
Woo!
So I figured that with this stitchery type stuff we're dealing with in this new arc, I wanted to look up some facts about stitching.
Stitches.
So I looked up about stitches or sutures. And
the earliest known stitched was built in 1817 in England.
I'm pretty sure it was in Switzerland, wasn't it?
Possibly, yes.
Anyway, the earliest reports of surgical suture dates to 3000 BC in ancient Egypt, and the oldest known suture is in a mummy from 1100 BC. So cool. they've been at this for a real long time.
I mean, it makes sense as a way to fix oneself.
Mm-hmm.
This fact kind of made me think of the 5th Harry Potter book, which, spoilers for a however old book, where Arthur Weasley gets bitten by the snake and has some young, cool healer who's there trying to help him because normal magic isn't affecting the stiffs, and he's like, "Oh, we're trying this muggle cure, which is stitches." And Molly Weasley's like, "I'm assuming that doesn't actually mean you're trying to sew yourself back together, right? You wouldn't be that insane."
Yes, but actually, as it turns out, this practice is as old as anything else we know about.
Basically.
Yeah. So anyway, in the Middle Ages, sutures were made out of catgut, which I also learned are not made from cat guts.
What is it then?
It's made from sheep guts and cow guts.
Okay, so it is guts though.
Yeah, it is guts, but they're not sure about the etymology, but it seems to be short for cattle gut or something like that.
So I'd seen that word before, and
I've always assumed that it was guts of a cat.
Me too.
But
absolutely,
it's not. So anyway, catgut made from cows and sheep and goats and whatever. This is what sutures were made of. Same sort of thing that they would put in violins and so forth. Mm-hmm. And this often led to infection, as you might expect, because they hadn't invented sterilization yet.
So they're just pulling a cattle's gut out and sewing you up with it?
Yep. So it wasn't until 1906 that they were able to actually get sterilized catgut sutures.
That seems surprisingly late. I mean, to be honest, I don't know the history of sterilization.
Yeah, so this was Joseph Lister who kind of introduced the concept of sterilization in medicine and surgery.
You mean the man who invented listeria?
So it is about the same time that sterilization in surgery became a thing, is when they started using sterilizing sutures. And apparently it took him a really long time. It took him 40 some years to find a way to actually sterilize the catgut
Oh wow.
because he invented a method in like the 1860s
Okay.
and it didn't work. And then
On
he invented
catgut
another
specifically,
method.
or
Pardon?
it didn't work on catgut specifically, or
Well, I
didn't
think
work?
he was trying to find a way to sterilize catgut specifically.
Okay.
And he came up with a method in the 1860s and it didn't work. They weren't fully sterilized. He came up with
Mhm.
another method. It didn't work. And it wasn't until 1906 that he was like, found a way to like actually sterilize them.
That's really cool.
But as it turns out, catgut, even if it's sterilized, I don't know if this is like political will or actual medical concern, but apparently there's a concern about mad cow disease from catgut sutures, so it is actually banned in several places.
For what it's worth, mad
For what
cow
it's worth, they
disease.
don't usually use it for sutures much anymore anyway, because
It's all
you can
synthetic.
use synthetic materials, but
Yeah, but I mean, not catgut. Sorry, mad cow disease is a folded prion, so sterilizing it won't do anything to it.
yep.
It's not a living thing or something that you can kill, as far as I know. Though heat denatures it, usually.
Does it?
Yeah,
Wouldn't that like
heat denatures the proteins.
denature? I don't know what denaturing a protein means, but if
Breaks
it
it
affects
down.
that protein, wouldn't it affect all the proteins and then the whole thing would fall apart?
Well, if it's made of protein,
I mean, it's made of gut.
collagen, and all the different things that go into a gut. I don't know what's in a gut, but
Look at us. We're teaching you biofacts and we're just like not knowing things.
yep. No, I mean, I'm sure one of our listeners has that answer at ready availability. But yeah, because I mean, that's why you cook. That's why in Canada, all the restaurants cook their burgers
That's why in Canada we
high.
cook our meat.
Yes, which is incorrect. Proper burgers should be medium rare, and you can't buy those at restaurants in Canada.
Oh, I see where you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, higher temperature doneness is safer but less tasty. But Canada has had mad cow, I believe, whereas the U.S. has not.
That sounds
Incorrect. I don't know,
incorrect.
but I will look it up.
There have been 6 cases in cows in the United States.
Okay, but not in humans.
But one was imported from Canada and is believed to have been infected there.
Okay, that's not that much. But yeah, most of it comes from the UK, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, it does look like we had a mad cow disease outbreak or something or other like 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a bigger deal for us, I think, than it was for American.
For the U.S., yeah.
So it has appeared in the U.S., but just not as prominently, I guess.
Interesting. Because I think heat helps for that, but I'm not certain.
Well.
Alrighty. Anyway.
With that very vague possible fact, and the actual facts about the history of suturing that I found on Wikipedia and are therefore 100% accurate, we will leave you for this evening and talk to you next time.
See y'all next time. Thank you. Do 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 do
Wah, 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 wah.